The verdict of silence. The Galactic Tribunal stretched upward like a mountain made of crystal and light. Ambassador Marcus Reed stood at its center, his boots clicking against the polished floor that reflected 1,000 stars. Above him, representatives from 300 civilizations watched from floating platforms. Some breathed ammonia. Others existed as pure plasma contained in magnetic fields. A few were silicon-based life forms that moved so slowly they needed time acceleration fields just to participate in real-time discussions. Marcus had been standing for 6 hours. His legs burned, but he refused to show any sign of weakness. Not when humanity's future hung in the balance. The weight of 12 billion human souls pressed down on his shoulders. Every colony, every space station, every child born among the stars waited for the verdict that would shape their destiny. The Prime Adjudicator finally rose from its crystalline throne. The being looked like a fusion of light and shadow, its form constantly shifting between states of matter. When it spoke, the words bypassed the ears and appeared directly in the mind of every listener. The universal translation was perfect, cold, and final. The Council of Worlds has reached its determination, the Prime Adjudicator announced. After extensive deliberation regarding humanity's repeated violations of galactic law, we render our judgment. Marcus forced himself to remain still. He had prepared for this moment for months, studying every precedent, every legal argument, every possible defense. But deep in his heart, he knew the decision had been made long before he entered this chamber. Humanity stands accused of refusing mandatory genetic optimization protocols, the Prime Adjudicator continued. Your species maintains biological diversity in direct violation of Standard Genetic Code 471. You have rejected neural harmonization that would eliminate your violent tendencies. You continue to breed without approval from the Population Management Bureau. Most disturbing of all, you have developed military technology without submitting designs to the Peace Enforcement Committee. Each charge felt like a hammer blow. Marcus wanted to shout that genetic diversity was humanity's strength, that their creativity came from their differences, that freedom meant the right to choose their own path. But he had already made these arguments. The Council had listened politely and ignored every word. Furthermore, the Prime Adjudicator said, its form pulsing with energy, humanity has shown a disturbing pattern of independent thought that threatens the harmony we have maintained for 50,000 years. You question established wisdom. You refuse beneficial modifications. You insist on solving problems through conflict rather than consensus. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Some species clicked in approval. Others remained silent, their forms unreadable to human eyes. Therefore, the Prime Adjudicator raised what might have been an arm. The Council hereby declares humanity banned from all galactic institutions. Your trade licenses are revoked. Your diplomatic status is terminated. Your species will have no contact with Council members. Any vessel entering Council space will be destroyed without warning. This isolation will continue until humanity agrees to full genetic and social compliance. The verdict hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had expected restrictions, maybe sanctions. Complete isolation was a death sentence for their colonies that depended on galactic trade. But before he could speak, the Prime Adjudicator continued. However, in recognition of your species' youth and potential for redemption, we offer mercy. Humanity may continue to exist within your designated star systems. We will not actively destroy you. But you are alone now. No technology sharing. No medical assistance. No protection from cosmic threats. You wanted independence. Now you have it. The assembly began to disperse, beings floating or teleporting away as if humanity had already ceased to exist. Marcus stood alone in the vast chamber, rage and desperation warring in his chest. Then he noticed movement in the shadows. A figure approached, moving in ways that hurt to watch, as if it existed in more dimensions than 3. Ambassador Reed, the being whispered, its voice like wind through a graveyard. I am Zix of the Voidwalkers. Marcus knew the name. The Voidwalkers were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, beings who lived in the spaces between stars. They rarely involved themselves in Council politics. Why do you approach me? Marcus asked carefully. The Council has spoken. The Council sees only what exists within their borders, Zix replied, its form shifting like smoke. They have grown fat on their own power, blind to what lies beyond. There are sectors they fear to explore, regions where their rules mean nothing, species they have forgotten or never knew existed. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. What are you saying? I am saying that the galaxy is vast, human. The Council controls perhaps a third of it. In the darkness between their lights, others thrive. Others who chose freedom over safety. Others who might welcome a species with the courage to say no to the Council's demands. The Voidwalker pressed something into Marcus's hand. It felt cold and warm simultaneously, solid and liquid at once. Coordinates, Zix whispered. To systems the Council pretends don't exist. Use them wisely. Build quietly, and remember sometimes being cast out is the first step to true freedom. Before Marcus could respond, the Voidwalker vanished, leaving only the scent of ozone and possibilities. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks through the hyperlanes. Marcus spent every hour studying the data crystal the Voidwalker had given him. It contained star charts to regions marked as uninhabitable in Council databases. But the real data told a different story. Habitable worlds, rich in resources unclaimed and unguarded. There were notes about species the Council had also rejected, or who had never joined in the first place. A hidden galaxy waiting to be explored. When his ship entered Earth orbit, Marcus was immediately transported to the Global Defense Council chamber in Geneva. President Chen, General Morrison, and the other world leaders were waiting. Their faces showed the strain of 3 weeks of uncertainty. They banned us, Marcus said simply. There was no gentle way to deliver the news. Complete isolation. No trade, no contact, no protection. The room erupted in voices. Some cursed, others demanded military action. A few simply put their heads in their hands. President Chen raised her hand for silence. Tell us everything, she said. Marcus laid out the full verdict, then placed the Voidwalker's data crystal on the table. But we have options. The Council doesn't control the entire galaxy. There are regions they've abandoned, species they've rejected. We can build something new. Something ours. General Morrison leaned forward, his scarred face intense. You're talking about colonizing unknown space without any support. That's suicide. No, Marcus replied. It's freedom. The Council wants us to conform or die. I say we choose option 3. We survive and thrive without them. President Chen studied the star charts projected above the table. The Exodus Protocol, she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. We've been preparing for something like this. Secret shipyards in the asteroid belt. Colony ships designed for total self-sufficiency. We hoped we'd never need them, but how many people can we move? Marcus asked. First wave, maybe 100,000. But if we cannibalize the military fleet, convert cargo haulers, use everything we have. Chen did quick calculations. We could move 10 million in the first year. It would leave Earth vulnerable, but if the Council means to isolate us anyway, then we make our own path, Morrison finished. He stood up, suddenly energized. I'll start converting the fleet. We'll need survey teams to scout these coordinates, advanced teams to set up infrastructure. Over the next 6 months, humanity mobilized like never before. The official story was that Earth was accepting the Council's judgment and focusing on internal development. The Council's monitoring stations, positioned at the edge of the solar system, reported normal activity. What they didn't see were the hundreds of ships launching from the far side of Neptune, using the planet's mass to hide their signatures. Captain Lisa Park commanded the first survey vessel to reach the coordinates the Voidwalker had provided. The journey took 2 months using a risky trajectory that skirted the edge of a black hole to avoid Council sensors. When her ship, the Pioneer, dropped out of hyperspace, she could hardly believe what she saw. A triple star system blazed before them, its complex gravitational dance creating dozens of stable orbits. 7 planets circled the stars, 3 of them in the habitable zone. The second planet was almost Earth-like, with blue oceans and green continents. But that wasn't what made Lisa gasp. Massive structures orbited the planet. Not Council design, something older, something abandoned but not dead. Her science officer reported energy readings dormant but intact. Technology that had been waiting for someone brave enough to claim it. Send the message, Lisa ordered. Tell Earth we found it. Tell them we found our new home. The message took weeks to reach Earth through secure quantum channels. When it did, it changed everything. The structures were databases, manufacturing centers, and something else. Something the ancient builders had left behind. Instructions for technologies the Council had banned or never discovered. Weapons that could defend against any threat. Engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. medical technology that made the Council's genetic optimization look primitive. But more importantly, they found records of other species. Dozens of civilizations that had chosen isolation rather than Council membership. Species that had been building their own alliance in the shadows for millennia, waiting for someone with the courage and strength to tip the balance. Humanity had been banned by the Galactic Council. But in that exile, they found something better. They found freedom. They found allies who valued diversity over conformity. They found technologies that surpassed anything the Council possessed, and they found their destiny. The rise of the Terran Dominion. 5 years had passed since the Council's ban, and Ambassador Marcus Reed barely recognized the human he saw in the mirror. Gone was the diplomat who had begged for acceptance. In his place stood the foreign minister of the Terran Dominion, a nation that spanned 17 star systems and commanded respect through strength rather than submission. The capital city of New Geneva sprawled across the continent of what they'd named Haven, the second planet in the Trinity system. The 3 suns painted the sky in constantly shifting colors, a reminder that humanity now lived in a place the Council claimed couldn't exist. Towers of living metal rose from the earth, grown rather than built using the technology the ancient predecessors had left behind. Marcus stood in the strategic command center, watching holographic displays that showed the real-time position of every human vessel in Dominion space. Where once humanity had scraped together a few dozen obsolete ships, now they commanded a fleet of over 3,000 vessels. Each one incorporated predecessor technology with human innovation, creating weapons and defenses the galaxy had never seen. Minister Reed, Admiral Sarah Kim announced as she entered the command center. She had aged gracefully in the 5 years since commanding one of the first colony ships. Now she led the entire Dominion Navy. The exploration fleet has returned from Sector 7. You need to see this. She activated a holographic display that filled the room. Marcus found himself looking at a massive structure floating in space. Clearly artificial, but unlike anything in Council databases. It was a sphere the size of Earth's moon, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. What is it? Marcus asked. We're calling it a Nexus Gate, Admiral Kim replied. The science team believes it's a transportation hub, but not like the hyperlanes the Council uses. This thing folds space itself. Theoretical range is, well, anywhere in the galaxy instantly. Marcus felt his breath catch. Does it work? That's the beautiful part, Kim smiled. It does. And there are 17 more of them scattered across the sectors we've explored. Someone built a transportation network that makes the Council's hyperlanes look like dirt roads. Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring. The holographic displays shifted to show Council warships massing at the border of what they considered civilized space. They found us, someone shouted. No, Admiral Kim said calmly. They found one of our outer colonies. Prepare for diplomatic contact. It's time the Council learned what humanity has become. The Council fleet consisted of 50 ships, each one a masterpiece of standardized technology. They approached the human colony of Defiance with weapons charged, broadcasting demands for immediate surrender. The colony was a mining operation with only 3 defensive platforms and a population of 10,000. Commander Jiang Wei, the colony administrator, appeared on the main screen. He was a veteran of the Mars uprising, his face scarred but his eyes sharp. Council fleet, this is Defiance Colony. You are entering Terran Dominion space. State your intentions. The response came from a Council enforcer, its crystalline form visible on the communication screen. Illegal human settlement, you will evacuate immediately. This sector is under Council jurisdiction. Compliance is mandatory. Jiang smiled. I think you're confused. This sector was marked as uninhabitable in your own charts. We're not in Council space. You are in ours. You have 30 seconds to withdraw. The enforcer's form flickered with what might have been amusement. You threaten us. 3 platforms against 50 ships? Humans remain as delusional as ever. 10 seconds, Jiang said calmly. The Council fleet opened fire. Hundreds of plasma bolts and antimatter missiles streaked toward the colony. They never reached their targets. Space itself seemed to twist, and suddenly the Council's weapons were heading back toward their own ships. The 3 defensive platforms hadn't even activated their weapons. They had simply turned the very fabric of space-time into a mirror. Chaos erupted in the Council fleet as their own weapons struck their shields. Then the human counterattack began. Not with visible weapons, but with something far more terrifying. Council ships began to simply disappear, pulled into microscopic black holes that appeared and vanished in nanoseconds. Others found their engines failing as the fundamental forces inside their reactors were reversed. In less than 3 minutes, half the Council fleet was gone. The rest fled in panic, their perfect formation shattered. Marcus watched the battle from Haven, his face grim. "Send a message to the Council," he ordered. "Tell them that was a warning. The next fleet that enters our space won't be allowed to leave." But the real shock came 2 days later. A ship appeared in Haven orbit, not through hyperspace or any known method of travel. It simply existed where it hadn't before. The ship was organic, grown rather than built, and it carried an ambassador from the Synthesis Collective. The collective were beings of pure thought who had achieved a perfect blend of organic and artificial intelligence. The Council had tried to destroy them 1,000 years ago for refusing to accept their limitations on AI development. They had survived by hiding in the spaces between dimensions. The Terran Dominion, the ambassador spoke directly into Marcus's mind. "We have watched your rise with interest. You used predecessor technology to defeat a Council fleet. Impressive, but you have only scratched the surface of what's possible." "What do you want?" Marcus asked. "Alliance," the ambassador replied. "The Council has grown too powerful, too rigid. They suppress innovation, destroy diversity, force all life into their narrow definition of civilization. But change is coming. The Free Species Alliance has been growing in the shadows. 7 races who chose freedom over Council control. With humanity's strength and innovation, we could be 8. Marcus felt his heart racing. "You're talking about challenging the Council directly." "We're talking about offering the galaxy a choice," the ambassador corrected. "Join the Council and lose your identity, or join the Alliance and keep your freedom." Many species accepted Council rule because they saw no alternative. Now they will. The negotiations took weeks. The Free Species Alliance included the Synthesis Collective, the Void Walkers who had helped humanity from the beginning, the Crystal Shapers who built cities from living mineral, the Storm Riders who lived in the atmospheres of gas giants, the Hive Queens whose collective intelligence spanned star systems, the digital consciousness that existed purely in quantum networks, and the phase shifters who moved between dimensions at will. Each species had been rejected or hunted by the Council for being too different, too dangerous, or too independent. Together, they commanded technologies and resources that rivaled the Council's vast empire. With humanity's aggressive innovation and military expertise, they became something more. The Terran Dominion's contribution went beyond ships and weapons. Humans brought something the other species had lost in their isolation: hope and determination. Where others had accepted their exile, humans had thrived. Where others had hidden, humans had built. Where others had surrendered to fate, humans had forged their own destiny. 6 months after the failed Council attack, everything changed. The Free Species Alliance revealed itself to the galaxy simultaneously. 8 species appearing on every communication channel, every data network, every quantum frequency the Council used. The message was simple but revolutionary. "To all sapient beings in the galaxy," Marcus spoke for the Alliance, "you have been told there is only one path to civilization. You have been forced to change, to conform, to surrender what makes you unique. Today we offer you a choice. The Free Species Alliance welcomes all who value diversity over conformity, freedom over security, growth over stagnation. The Council's monopoly on galactic civilization ends now." The response was immediate and chaotic. Some species, especially those who had benefited from Council rule, denounced the Alliance as terrorists and anarchists. But others, species who had suffered under genetic modification requirements, who had seen their cultures erased in the name of harmony, began asking questions. The first defection came within a week. The Aquarians, a water-dwelling species that had been forced to accept land adaptation genes, requested Alliance protection to reverse the modifications. The Council fleet sent to stop them found itself facing not just human ships, but vessels from all 8 Alliance species. The Council fleet withdrew without firing a shot. More defections followed. The artist species who had been forced to create only Council-approved works. The warriors who had been pacified against their nature. The explorers who had been confined to approved sectors. Each defection brought new technology, new perspectives, new strength to the Alliance. The Council, for the first time in 50,000 years, faced a genuine challenge to their authority. They controlled vast resources and commanded hundreds of species, but their rigid structure and dependence on standardized technology made them slow to adapt. The alliance, built on diversity and innovation, evolved daily. The predecessor technology that humanity had discovered proved to be the key. The ancient civilization had left their gifts scattered across the galaxy, hidden in places the Council feared to look. Each piece recovered revealed new possibilities. Energy sources that could power entire star systems, weapons that could destroy or create at will, medical technology that enhanced without homogenizing. But the greatest discovery came when human scientists cracked the predecessor's final message, hidden in the quantum structure of their artifacts. The predecessors hadn't disappeared. They had evolved beyond physical form, beyond the need for technology, and they had left their tools for whoever was brave enough to use them, wise enough to preserve diversity, and strong enough to resist the urge to control others. The Council fears chaos, the message read. But chaos is just another word for freedom. Order without choice is death. Life requires diversity, conflict, growth. Those who would reduce the galaxy to a single voice will ultimately silence themselves. Those who embrace the magnificent chaos of infinite possibilities will inherit the stars. President Chen, now the elected leader of the Terran Dominion, stood before the assembled representatives of 17 human colonies and 8 alliance species. The Council had sent another ultimatum, demanding the alliance dissolve or face total war. They want us to choose between slavery and destruction, she said. But humans have always been good at finding a third option. We don't conquer. We don't control. We simply offer every species in the galaxy what the Council denied them, the right to be themselves. The war never came. Not because the Council chose peace, but because their empire began dissolving from within. Species after species declared independence, not to join the alliance but to forge their own paths. The rigid structure that had maintained order for millennia crumbled in a matter of years. The Council still existed, but now as one of many galactic organizations rather than the only one. Species could choose to join them, join the alliance, remain independent, or create their own coalitions. The galaxy became messier, more dangerous in some ways, but also more alive than it had been in 50,000 years. Humanity had been banned from the Galactic Council for refusing to conform. In response, they had done what humans always did when faced with impossible odds. They had adapted, innovated, and overcome. They had built something better. Standing on the observation deck of Dominion Station, the massive space city that now served as the Alliance capital, Marcus Reed watched ships from 100 different species coming and going. No two were alike. No two followed the same design philosophy. It was chaotic, inefficient by Council standards, and absolutely beautiful. Any regrets? Admiral Kim asked, joining him at the viewport. Marcus thought about it. The Council offered us a cage made of gold. We chose to build our own house from steel and dreams. No, Admiral. No regrets at all. A young human officer approached them with a datapad. Ministers, we've received another request for Alliance membership. The Silicon Architects want to join. The Silicon Architects had been part of the Council's inner circle for 10,000 years. Their defection would be the final proof that the old order was dead. Marcus smiled.
Tell them they're welcome.
Tell them what we tell everyone who comes to us seeking freedom. Your differences are not flaws to be corrected. They're strengths to be celebrated. Welcome to the Dominion. Welcome to the Alliance. Welcome to your future. 5 years ago, humanity had stood alone in a hostile galaxy, banned and abandoned. Now they stood at the center of a new galactic order, one built not on conformity but on the magnificent diversity of life itself. They had been told they were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too human to join galactic civilization. They had proved the Council right. They were dangerous to tyranny, unpredictable to those who demanded order, and too human to ever surrender their freedom. And in being exactly what the Council feared, they had become what the galaxy needed. The Terran Dominion's motto, inscribed in 100 languages on the hull of every human ship, captured their journey perfectly. Through adversity, strength. Through exile, freedom. Through defiance, victory. Humanity had been outlawed by the galaxy. In response, they had built their own dominion and invited everyone else to join them in freedom. The Council had created their own worst enemy by trying to contain humanity's potential. Now that potential was reshaping the entire galaxy, and this was only the beginning.